Hi, Riley with Chronicles of Liberty. And this video, number 21, is the fear of being slaves. The relationship in these early days of the colonists, from even the beginning of the Mayflower on, and England and other countries and other kingdoms were deteriorating daily, but especially during this revolutionary period. And the fear of becoming a slave to the king was a very real fear, and many recognized and understood the possibilities that when they were disarmed, they would become the slaves to the English. And rightfully so. Even as far back as the Mayflower, right? We know historically that over 700,000, probably closer to 1 million Irish were enslaved in that early 1630 period. And where they were taken was all over the world as slaves. And some of them were slaves to be bred with other slaves to create the mulatto of the West Indies, right? Many of the slaves, the men, were indentured and enslaved into the army to be the front lines as they went to war. And so we find that this whole slavery issue, and you can argue with me all day long if you want, about whether indentured servants are different than slaves or vice versa, or were the Irish really slaves, or were only the black slaves. And I don't care. I'm not here to argue the debate that way. But we do know that the Irish in this term were the first, and the colonists knew all about it. The people of that area and that arena knew all about it, and they were trying to get away from it. They were looking for freedom. And so here we have, 400 years later, we find the same thing happening, right? We have all these politicians trying to disarm those of us around the world, but most specifically here in America. They're disarming us, right, at a rapid pace. They're trying to take away every right. If you go up to Canada, right, old Mr. Trudeau, he's doing his job. He's getting the Canadians disarmed and doing whatever he has to. But here we find it being a very dangerous trend where those politicians are trying to disarm us. And I find it ironic that we have politicians today that have bodyguards with whatever gun, weapon they choose to protect that politician, yet those same politicians would deny us Americans, the same right to defend ourselves and our families that they enjoy through a bodyguard. And we also find really ironic to me the realities of they have these massive walls and fences around their estates, their mansions all over the place, and yet they don't close our borders. They don't put a fence up to protect our nation. They don't tend to protect us, but they are certainly protected. Now, if you're seeing a trend, you got to ask yourselves a little bit why. Why are the politicians doing this? What is their underlying purpose of A, disarming a population, B, not protecting us, and trying to create all this chaos? And if you're not seeing the trend, if you're not seeing what's really happening, it's because you're choosing not to see it, because it is absolutely happening. And if you choose not to see it, guess what? You choose to be a slave, and you will become a slave, or worse, you'll be dead. And the reality is, all of this is a reality that we're facing today, and many people don't want to see it. So what I want to do is I just want to read some of the thoughts from the early writers, the early philosophers, the early freedom fighters, the Sons of Liberty, that in that revolutionary period of the 1760s and 70s were writing about this topic. And I'm going to start first by James Madison. And he said, "The ultimate authority resides in the people alone. The advantage of being armed, which the Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation, forms a barrier against the enterprises of ambition." William Penn wrote, "Wear none of thy known chains, but keep free whilst thou art free." Patrick Henry said, "Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty or give me death." Thomas Jefferson wrote, "In questions of power, then, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution." Fisher Ames said, "The rights of conscience, of bearing arms, or of changing the government are declared to be inherent in the people. Benjamin Franklin wrote during a period of this conflict, he wrote, as Britain began to use force, it seemed absolutely necessary that we should be prepared to repel force with force. It is true old saying that make yourself sheep and the wolves will eat you. To which I may add another, he said, God helps them that help themselves. The general was secure, I suppose, that we would never be able to return the outrage in kind. But the defeat of a great body of his troops by the county people at Lexington and the actions at Bunker Hill, in which they were twice repulsed and the third time gained a dear victory, was enough to convince the ministers that the Americans can fight, and that this was harder nut to crack than they imagined. James Madison also said, oppressors can tyrannize only when they achieve a standing army, an enslaved press, and a disarmed populace. Boy, doesn't that sound familiar? Aren't we there, right? We got standing armies, and we got illegal aliens being recruited in all kinds of our larger cities to be police officers, law enforcement. And we have even being recruited in our own militaries. And then they have the enslaved press, right? We know the propaganda is rampant throughout all of the press, the media, and they are trying to disarm us, right? So this is a reality. So again, I ask the question that so many should be asking, why does the press lie to us continuously? And that's not hyperbole. It's nonstop. I mean, they're constantly in a propaganda mode. So why do politicians want us unable to defend ourselves? Why are we seeing illegal aliens given these law enforcement positions? Or why are they actively recruiting all of these illegal aliens that are coming across the border to work in the military, right? Why are they doing this? And this is an absolute reality that we've got to understand what their purpose is, and it's nefarious at best. Why are the statutes and rules of communities now enforced by law enforcement as misdemeanors and felonies when they are often in outright opposition to our constitutional rights? Consider well these statistics of a disarmed population. Turkey in 1911, citizens disarmed. 1.5 million Armenians were slaughtered. 1929, Russia, citizens disarmed. 20 million Russians murdered. 1935, China, citizens disarmed. 20 million Chinese killed. 1938, Germany, citizens disarmed. 6 million Jews were murdered. 1956, Cambodia, citizens disarmed. 1 million intellectuals were murdered. 1964, Guatemala, citizens disarmed. 100,000 Mayan Indians massacred. 1970, Uganda, citizens disarmed. 300,000 Christians put to death. There's a trend here, people. If you're still unsure why any politician would want you disarmed or diminish your ability to defend yourself, then I wish you good luck. If you don't get it, I can't help you. But for me, Jus Meum Tabor, good luck, people. Let's not be slaves.